start. Okay, this should work. 1, 2, 3. Yes, it's working. Okay, so last week we had a quiz. Project 3 is due today. It covers animation, and you need to propose 4 user interactions there. At least 2 should be animation related. Let's just kind of look at what's the project about. Well, as you can see, this is the demo project. So already you have a couple of animations going on. So in the demo project, you can, I think, change the type of the animation, as you see here. You can change the, there's 3 types. You can kind of course, not destroy them. And the nice thing, you can change the animation as it's kind of happening to a different type. Other thing, you can also increase or decrease the speed, which is something I'm going to talk about today, how to do that. And I believe we still have, what else? We still have the size and glow and all of that stuff going on here. That's like unrelated. Okay, so that's the project for you. Any questions on the deadline? No? Okay. So that was project 3. This is due today. Now there's also project 4. That's your last project, and that will be due December 11th. And no late submissions, because that's right at the end of the semester, and we need to have everything graded a day or something later. So that will cover animation also. The difference here is you only need to do 3 user interactions, out of which 1 will be animation related and 1 will be a keyboard interaction. So keyboard interaction is something I'm going to show you how to do today. That's pretty easy. Another thing we'll focus on is on how to write kind of clean code, and using how to kind of clean up the UI to make it a little bit more aesthetic and so. And of course, no bugs. So if you kind of submit a buggy code, that will be also that will be kind of frowned upon. So I'm gonna kind of cover a couple of these points. First of all, with small mini videos, just so everyone is kind of understanding what I'm happening. I'm also going to record this talk, this lecture, so you can maybe later view it at home. So let's see, first of all, about writing comments. How would that work?
Just by looking at this, you can probably recognize what the issue is, and that's that we are over-commenting. These comments are just getting in the way and actually making the code less readable. For example, we have function to check if a number is prime, but that just describes what the function declaration is. It's essentially the exact same line 2 times, so we don't need this. It's not adding any extra value. Then we say check if a number is less than 2. Again, that just describes the line of code. We don't need that. We don't need this one either. But then here we say at least one divisor must be less than the square root, so we can stop there. And this is actually a good comment, because this is explaining why we are looping to math.square root of number, which if you first looked at this, it might not actually be all of that obvious. I know the first time I saw a function for is prime and I saw this logic, I was actually a little bit confused by this. It took me a minute to understand it. So having a comment for this more complicated logic is actually a good thing. But then again, we don't need these comments that are just saying what the code does. We can delete this, and we can delete this as well. And then again, we have another check at the bottom that just tells us why we're returning true. But again, we don't need this, so we can simply delete it. Let's go.
So the point here is he's trying to make is if there's a kind of a complicated thing going on in your code, or something that is not super verbose, then add a comment. Otherwise, don't do that. And that's something we'll kind of look into in project 4 when you're grading. So another thing we're going to look into is kind of coding style, and I'll let him talk about it, and then I'm going to narrate.
Formatting. So you can see from this example here, we have some very glaring bad issues with the formatting, but there's also some less obvious ones. So first of all, this indentation is just inconsistent. So let's go ahead and fix that so that everything's indented to the same depth for the same sort of nesting level, which in this case is all nested 1 indent into this function. But then we also have some smaller differences. For example, around this variable, we have no spaces for the equal sign, which just adds that extra layer of inconsistency and makes the code just a little bit less readable, and these things do start to add up. We're also being inconsistent in using const for this variable here, but let for this variable here. Now, of course, there's times we want const and times we want let, but there's a lot of times where it doesn't matter at all, and generally the rule is to just be consistent. And the thing I've seen the most in industry is actually just using const instead of let, unless you absolutely need something to be reassignable. And then we also have this difference in the quotation marks. So here we use double quotes, here we use double quotes, but here we use single quotes. And here we're using a template literal, which it's fine to use the template literal in some places and single or double quotes in other places, but there's no reason to be using all of them. And if
So the point he's trying to make is try to be consistent in your style. So like, if there's like a no space between like this age and 26, then there should be no space here. Or if there's space here, there should be space here as well. So and similar with the strings and all of the other indentation and things. So that's another thing we'll look into in project 4 when we're grading it. Here's another point about code. So don't repeat code. I'll let him talk a little bit about that.
Cleaner than using concatenation, but the most important thing is simply being consistent. Next, I want to talk about this idea of the dry principle, meaning don't repeat yourself or don't repeat your code. Now, to be clear, this does not mean that you should never have repeated lines of code, because that's not the case. But what it does mean is you shouldn't be repeating actual business logic. So the same logic should not exist in two different places for the same purpose. So for example, here we have log login, log log out, and log sign up. And there's just not really a reason to have 3 different functions for this that all do the exact same thing. So what we can do instead is say function log action, and this can take in some action, and we can say console.log, and then we can use a template literal if we want. So we can say user, and then we'll have our action, which is going to be the string of logged in, logged out, or signed up. And then we can have the rest of this at, and then we'll have that date, so new date. And this is just a little bit cleaner, so we won't need all of these repeated functions. Instead, we can just use this one function that does all of these things. And then if we ever want...
So again, like what he's saying is if you say you have your code, your scripting Unity code, and you have like 3 functions that almost look exactly the same, we'll be looking for that when we're grading, and we'll be not happy with it. So the way to deal with it is kind of try to modularize this into one function, which has an input, and that just changes like this kind of thing. So the idea with this project 4 that you're going to have to submit is try to make it kind of bulletproof, as if you're kind of giving it into a client, like out there in industry. There's a couple of more points we should go over. Let's see. Yes, this is important. Avoid magic numbers.
To talk about the idea of magic numbers, or just more generally magic values, which are any values that appear in our code that are unclear what they mean. Usually these are numbers and strings where they're just hard-coded in, and it's not clear what their purpose is. And if we just give them names, it's much easier to read that code. So here we check that a transaction type is 1, and if it is, we multiply the price by 1.1. And what this actually represents is taxes, but it's very unclear that that's what this is. So let's add some constants. So let's say const taxable transaction type, and this is going to be equal to 1. We might want to use some kind of enum for this, but for now, this is fine. Then we can also say const tax, and we'll call this a tax multiple. Another way to do this would be to, instead of having 1.1, be like the tax rate of 0.1, and then do the math that way. But either way, this will work. And we can put these values in here. So I'll paste both of these in. It's just going to make this code a little bit easier to read, because now, even if you aren't looking at this part of the code, you can look at this and say, okay, this is a taxable transaction. So we are multiplying the price by the tax multiple, which is just going to make it much more clear looking at this code, what it actually does. Okay, so now I have this function that...
Okay, so just let me summarize. So if you have these magical numbers like let price equals 10, so that, or like what was here before, like this was like 1.1 and this was 1 or whatever, all of these should be like constants that you predefined in the beginning, because if you want it to be so that people look at your code and they exactly understand what's going to happen, without like kind of seeing these like numbers that are called magic numbers that don't really mean anything. Now, once you switch this into these kind of nicer variable names, it's kind of clear what's happening here. So again, try to avoid any kind of magical numbers or numbers without any comments or references when you're kind of typing in your Unity application. And here's like I think a final example here. What do we mean by when we say write clean code?
Follow. So we have this code that checks if the user is null and if they have a subscription, as well as if they're over 18. If they are, we show the full version of whatever this is. Otherwise, we show some child version. And then we have these else cases to throw an error saying the user needs a subscription and that the user is not found. But this whole thing is just sort of hard to follow. It's hard to tell what even this else goes with because there's so many different if checks. So what we can do instead is try to avoid this nesting by reorganizing the code. So instead of saying if the user is not null and then wrapping everything in this, let's instead invert this to say if the user is null, then we want to throw an error saying no user found. And what this does is, first of all, it means we don't need to nest anymore because everything after this we know there's a user, but also it makes the error code go with the if check so that it's not completely separated on the other side of this massive if. And now we can do the same thing for this one. So we can say if the user has a subscription, but instead of this being user.hasSubscription, we want to do the inverse of this. So we're going to say if the user does not have a subscription, then we want to throw this error down here. So I'm going to paste this up here. And now we just have this code left, so we can get rid of this if check, as well as we can get rid of all of these else cases. And now for this, we can do something very similar if we want. So we can consider this age to be sort of like another spot to early return. So we can say if the user.age is less than 18, then what we want to do is show the children version. And if we...
And actually he's doing like one of the issues we just talked about that are bad. So he's like putting 18 here, which is like bad according to our kind of specs. This needs to be basically a constant, like what is 18? Is it like a minor threshold or whatever? So this actually needs to be a constant or a variable with a kind of a very specific name. But you know, his intention is good. Like he wants to kind of, instead of having all these like curly bracket kind of hellscape here, he's trying to organize it so it's kind of clear what's happening in this code. Anyway, so the punchline here is everything here is going to be online, so you can just view it later, but try to kind of clean up your code, avoid magical numbers, write comments where they're needed, don't kind of do kind of weird style, like one part of your code has one style, the other has a different indentation, different style. Don't repeat code and all of that. Okay, then another point we're going to look at is like how clean your UI is and how aesthetic it is. So far we've been pretty lenient, like with, you know, we just kind of check that everything is working and whatever you say you're going to do kind of works. But this time we're going to kind of actually kind of be as if we're like, you know, you're shipping this to a company, you're like a contractor or you're working for actually a company and you actually want to have it perfect as much as you can. So there's a couple of elements here. I'm going to just talk about these elements and then I'm going to show you a couple of videos that kind of exemplify it. So one element is like spacing. So like this is just for a kind of internet website, but you know, if you say have buttons, you don't want the buttons to be kind of too crowded so they don't have too much space around them. So you want to kind of have some space around your buttons, for example. Another kind of important point is if you have UI buttons, you don't want them to be kind of scattered. You want them to be concentrated where your user should find them. So for example, I don't know, the buttons maybe should be here, or they should be here, or they should be like somewhere kind of where you expect people to see them and kind of find them and use them. So don't kind of try to focus when you're designing where your buttons will be. Here's a very good example of how, you know, how to not place things. So here you have these cancel and submit buttons kind of hovering on the bottom right, but it's kind of disconnected and loose from where the main kind of chunk of the UI is. So the right way to do it is just put in like kind of everything should be together on the same kind of column as much as possible. Another thing that you want to pay attention to is the buttons that you have should actually have labels. So if you have a button that is not labeled correctly, people will not know how to use it. Again, we're gonna think of this project as if you're kind of, someone is buying this from you. So you want to be as clear and aesthetic as you can. So yeah, another thing is try to be professional. So if you have buttons of different sizes that doesn't really look good, try to keep everything kind of with the same or proper size as much as you can. Another point is kind of, here's like this is from some game. Avoid too many buttons, right? Like you don't want, I know what, you probably won't have this in your code, but if for some reason you do, this is like a bad idea. Try to make it simple. You only have to have 3 interactions anyway, right? So you don't need that many buttons. But try to avoid that for project 4. Another thing to look into is consistency. So again, we're looking at aesthetics and UI. If you have, like, say, a button of this style, don't mix it with a green and red button, right? You want, just pick like a theme and stick with it. So everything should have the same kind of color theme. Usually it's like easy because Unity just provides you a default theme, and I didn't see people change it too much, but some do. Some have like blue buttons, some have like green buttons, and some have like pink buttons. So that kind of distracts and kind of doesn't look professional. So try to keep professional. Okay, there's a couple of videos here, but before I show it, again, we're gonna look at these. This is gonna be on the Canvas website. If for some reason you forget about it, we may deduct points. We will deduct points if you don't kind of adhere to these kind of concepts. Okay, so let's see a couple of cool videos on UI. It's, again, short videos, mostly about games, but again, apply to UI.
The first title that we're actually going to talk about is a title that many of you are probably well aware of because it's been all over social media the last couple of months, and that is Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, developed by Rocksteady. Now, the problem with Suicide Squad is it suffers from cognitive overload. And if you've never heard of that term before, in the UX design world, cognitive overload refers to when a website, app, or even a video game becomes way too complex and confusing to the user. And a lot of this has to do with the amount of elements that are on the screen at any given time during an action sequence within.
So you can see here how many like kind of stuff is happening. There's like all these numbers and, you know, this icon, this button, this, I don't know. So try to keep it simple with your
Suicide Squad. Now, we've all seen the previews, we've seen the reviews, I'm not going to dive into it, but one of the things that really could have helped this game out on the review side of things is basically just dumb down the overall UI elements that are blasted onto the screen. This game suffers from massive overload where the user doesn't even know where to look on the screen during a particular action sequence. It's just way too much information that one person can consume at one time. There is something that I learned during my design studies that my professor taught me that has stayed with me for well over a decade now of me doing this. And that's, if an element does not serve a particular purpose, or you can at least tell someone else the purpose that that element is there and used for, then it probably doesn't need to be on your end product.
Okay, so that's like a 1 point. So don't add stuff that's not supposed to be on your app and doesn't do anything. Here's another video that's also going to be relevant. Okay, this is kind of more about colors.
The second game that we're going to talk about is The Ascent, developed by Neon Giant. Now, The Ascent is actually a game that I really do love and enjoy, but I can only play it a very short stints at a time, just because what the design principle that it breaks here is having very poor contrasting colors. In the design world, we're taught about color theory. And color theory, in other words, there are a combination of 2 or more colors that really complement each other that really don't cause any strain to into the human eye. This is where you have your dark background on a website, but you have white text on top of it. But what the Ascent really suffers from is a lot of blacks, a lot of dark tone to really give it that cyberpunk vibe. When you add red text on top of a black background with the combination of having really tiny font sizes, it really strains the human eye. But even if the Ascent had a large player base, their players can only play the game for very short stints because...
So again, the issue here, he's talking about like color choices, like have like buttons, if you add them, that are consistent and are readable, like not like these kind of weird red on black kind of type fonts. And I think we have only one more. Let me see. Oh, actually two more. Okay, here's another one.
Incredibly proud of. The third game that we're going to get into is Angry Birds 2, developed by Rovio Entertainment. Now, the design principle that Rovio actually breaks with Angry Birds 2 is something called intuitive design. Intuitive design, in the simplest term imaginable, is just how easy you can make your particular product. Intuitively, we know if we open up a web browser that red X is probably going to be on the right-hand side of the window if you're using a Windows product, or the red X will appear on the left-hand side if you're using an Apple product. Now, when it comes to game application, intuitively, we know for most games, if we press the A button, that's going to cause our character to jump. And if we hit the right trigger, that's going to cause our gun to fire. Those are all examples of what intuitive design is. So when you are designing your game, you have to ask yourself, how easy and simple can I make this for the user so they don't ultimately get frustrated and jump off the platform? The biggest problem that Rovio committed when jumping from Angry Birds 1 to 2 is they completely changed the main menu user interface from the traditional Angry Birds 1, which when the game launched, it had a humongous play button right in the front and center, so no player would get confused on where those main missions were, so they could immediately jump into the game. And they actually tucked away the main missions in the top right corner under this small icon that is hard to identify. So me as a player, when I was testing out the product, I had no idea where the main missions were. Another problem that Angry Birds 2 really suffers from is a very poor user flow sequence, which a user flow sequence is just how do you get from point A to point B the best and most efficient way possible without frustrating the user. You can count it from...
Okay, so he's just talking about kind of like, he had like an example here, pretty good example of how they had like a button which didn't really...
I had no idea where the main mission...
Where was that?
So they could...
There was like a button that was supposedly the main button, but it basically didn't say main anywhere. It just had a picture. So that's like something you want to avoid also for your app. Number 4. Okay, so these are just kind of very top-level guidelines. The specific things you want to avoid are these points. I'm going to put them in the project so it's kind of clearer. We just have one more video, and then I'm going to talk about project 4, how exactly it looks like, and so on.
And its impact on the overall user experience. You've done a bunch of exploration of what your UI can be, but in the end of the day...
So here's like a couple of examples of, it's the same game or same app, and there's different kind of UI options, right? So you have like, all of this kind of delivers the same kind of information. You have like a UI that shows, I don't know, your trading kind of items and all of that. And it's just different kind of, all 5 different options that show the same thing. So she's gonna explain what's the difference here.
We need to remember that UI needs to enable interaction with the game's world, not distract from it. Sometimes this decision can be very clear, but I have found that focusing on these 4 main elements often help me edit, revise, and decide a solid direction when it comes to critical UI visuals for a game. Readability. Am I sacrificing readability for style? Am I looking at the game's info or the info's styling? Consider the risk you could be over-designing your UI, perhaps due to color or more visual iteration in a decoration. You could be distracting the player from the content you're presenting to them. Personality. Can I see my world's keywords when I look at the UI, even without the visual support of characters and environments? What's important to see is in those games, brands or keywords are visually implied in the design. So visuals have the ability to stand on their own, but still reflect the game's brand. Implication. Are interactive elements distinct from non-interactive elements? How much can I edit down to a more essential core look? Your UI doesn't have to be literal to your references. Perhaps color palettes and light iconography is enough to communicate a brand in a world. Also, I need to make sure that the player can tell the difference between interactive objects and non-interactive objects. And finally, scale. Does the visual UI language have legs to expand to other UI elements? Can I scale without breaking the memory bank within the game? Can I possibly scale this distinct look to even perhaps marketing or community assets? You may find that perhaps some of your ideas, while looking really cool, have a really heavy memory load.
Okay, so she's just showing a couple of examples. The idea here is you can have a couple of different ways to present the same information. And the point that we look into is like kind of clarity and aesthetics. So try not to have it too kind of distracting or too kind of using kind of crazy colors and all of that. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so let's see a demo of Project 4. Again, Project 4 is kind of a minor improvement over Project 3. Let's see if this is working. Okay, so this is Project 4. As you can see, there is like a nice kind of, the difference here is there's like a nice kind of like, kind of this almost like a cover over the UI with different kind of rectangles short for different functionalities. So here, for example, the clock area has like this kind of beige color, while like animation is like separate, and spawn, whatever that does, is separate, and paint is separate. And you can really see that it's much kind of higher quality than like whatever we have right now. So this is the aesthetics part we're going to look into. In terms of functionality, it's mostly the same. I think the hide button didn't exist before. I'm going to show you how to do like a kind of like a hide button today. Not that cool, but you can. There's like a very long video online from a previous instructor that kind of explains how to do that, and so you can watch it at home. I'm going to show you the quick and dirty version today. You still have all the animation stuff. You can still kind of change your animation as it's going. And I guess you have these rand buttons that I'm not sure exactly what they do, but I think they just randomize your painting objects. Let's try the size. Does that work? Not so much. So a couple of things do work, a couple of things don't work. Actually, the size does work. Yeah, you can actually increase or decrease the size. So this is, as you see, this is like a more like a polishing of whatever you did in project number 3. In our painting app, in this case, in project number 3, everything is just kind of more neat and organized. There's no, I think, functionality-wise, there's not too many new things. It just kind of looks just more polished. It's like something you can actually show like another colleague or some sort of kind of person out there that's not like. And he will not think this is just for learning. He'll think that it's an actual app or something like that. Okay, so if you looking in the next couple of weeks, I just want to give you a heads up on the schedule before I deep dive into what we need to do today. So today I'm going to focus on keyboards and some other kind of ends and parts of what we need to cover for Project 4. Next week, we won't have a class because according to NJIT, next week is going to be a Thursday. So if you show up here, you're going to be by yourself or with people who usually show up on Thursday. On December 2nd, we may have a quiz. I need to double check it, but there's a potential quiz happening that day. And on December 9th, that's going to be basically just project hours. It's going to be like office hours for Project 4. So I'm not going to deliver any new material. Project 4 is due again December 11th, and there's not going to be any late submission allowed for that. So this is your time to kind of be serious and finish up. Okay, so another reminder is to do the evaluations, because right now we have 0 people who responded. So that'll be kind of difficult for people to know what's happening with the class if no one responded to the survey. Again, I am not like gonna push you to do it right now, but you know, it's something to think about when you have time. Okay, any questions before we start? Any questions? Okay, so let's just do this kind of quick things, and so we have the keyboard control scripting and all of that. So let's start that. Let's start with that first. Okay, so I have my non-fancy aesthetic UI, but it's here. I'm just going to use it for our class. So just to remind you where we were at last week or 2 weeks ago, depending on. So we have this painting app, which has like, you know, all the colors and all of that. Again, if you're looking into this right now in perspective of Project 4, this is not what I want you to have in Project 4. Project 4 should be more like this, okay? This is just a, you know, for this specific, just a demo for this specific class. We have the destroy button. We also have different animation types. If I have this kind of prefab, I can change the animation types. I remember that last time when we fiddled with it, it was not working. Well, I found it was like a funny bug somewhere. Just it was just not, the translation position was like off. So I fixed that, but now it's work. It was a very easy fix, and actually, the YouTube page has the correct implementation. Okay, so all of this is good. Now what I want to do is we have this. Let's just draw this again. So we have this kind of drop down that allows me to switch between animations, right? So I have 3 types here. So what I want to do is I want to add a keyboard interaction that will do that instead of just kind of having the user click here and do it kind of with a mouse and all of that. And again, just to remind you, this is something that is mandatory for you to do for Project 4. You need like at least 1 keyboard interaction. Okay, so let's look at how to do that. So I have my code here open. So the first thing I wanna do is I wanna actually check that things are working. So I added these 2. This is how I add this input get key down and input get key up kind of functions, and what they do is they basically tell me if I clicked on this space button. So I can actually kind of just click on space like here, and you can see there's going to be a printout here. So it says space down, space up. So down basically means I'm pressing on space, okay? And up is when I lift my hand and space is going to go up. Okay, so now my question is how actually to connect this to this specific functionality. So the way I would do it is just to remind you, this button, this drop down, actually is connected to a specific function in our code. So I don't, right now I don't super remember what that is, so let's just kind of go over and check what that would be. So I believe that is going to be painting shape drop down, this guy. And you can see painting shape drop down has 3 options right now, and it's connected to this function called set painting object index, okay? Set painting object index. And the way it works, it's basically, it receives some sort of integer from the drop down. So by some sort of integer, I mean, right now we have either like 0, 1, or 2. So 0 will be sphere, 1 will be capsule, prefab will be 2, and if we have more types, it'll just, 3, 4, and so on. And then it just does this kind of assignment. It just sets painting object index to that drop-down index. Okay, so all we need to do to kind of set this this keyboard functionality correctly is just kind of assign the painting object index, to a new number. So what I would do is where I have the code here, I would just do painting object index. Just add 1 to that, right? So basically, if it's like right now, if it's 0, or is that? So the logic is the following: if it's 0, it will show me spheres. If it's 1, it will show me capsules. If it's 2, it will show me prefabs. And every time I click on the space, it will just increment that by 1. So I click space, I'm at capsules. I click another time space, I'm at prefabs. Okay. Now there's like a small bug here. What's the bug? Any ideas what's the bug? How many painting options do I have right now here? How many painting objects do I have? How many options are they here? Free, right? Okay. So what is happening here is, what happens if I'm now at painting objects equals 4? What would that do? Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Because this way I can just get to painting object index number 10 or 15. I will just go, because I'm just adding +1, +1. What is the way around this potential issue? Because I don't have a painting object number 10, right? I have painting object number 0, I have painting object number 1, and I have painting object number 2. What should I do to get around this issue? It's like a small change to the code. Any ideas? So I have like option 0, I have option 1, and I have option 2. But with my current code, I can get to option 3 or 4 or even like 1001. But these don't exist. I only have these. These are the only options that are actually connected to painting ships. So what should I do? What's a quick fix? Again, this is not kind of nuclear science or advanced physics. It's like a very easy fix. Again, what the code does right now is this is like painting object index, right? Painting object index. Okay. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to connect the keyboard to that. So every time I click on the keyboard, on the space button, I'm just going to here. So if there's like a space, it goes here. If I click on the space keyboard. If I click on the space, it goes here. Now if I click on the space, again, it will go here. But this is like a bug, right? Because I don't have an object number 3. So what should I do? What's an easier way around this?
Can you create like a range from like 0 to 2 so that it only connects?
Yeah, easier. Yeah, I can do that, sure. But what's the easiest way to do this? I'm at like number 3 right now, but number 3 doesn't exist. What should I do? Again, this is my code. I can do whatever I want. I can also create a range, but let's continue a range for what? So the range will be like an array, which will have three options, and then okay. But what happens in your range when you're at number 2? How do you know to go back to 0? What's the logic for that? It's the same problem, right? So what could we do that's super easy here to just go back to 0? If we're like not in this 0, 1, 2 kind of values. Not rocket science, not nuclear science, very simple. How do we check conditions in computer, in scripting? what is like the command for checking conditions when you're writing a script?
You mean the switch case?
Switch, yeah, what's simpler than switch? What's easier than switch?
A if statement.
If statement, right. So can we just add an if statement here?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I
how,
feel like would it be much better if we use like the switch case?
well, let's just keep it simple. Keep it simple. So what should be the if statement? If what? If this guy is what?
It's equal to
Not equal to. If it's greater than.
if it's greater than 2,
If it's greater than 2, then what should I do?
then
We go back to.
we go back to
Right. Okay. Cool. So that's the only thing we should. This is like, so see, this is like super easy. No need of switch statements, ranges, and all of that. Kind of keep it simple. So let's just check if this works without kind of. Again, let me kind of pick an animation guy. Okay. And now I'm gonna click on space, and that I think it didn't work. Let me see why. Painting object is 0. Okay, +1. Oh, actually, I got confused. So we're talking about animation. So it's not this guy. It's a different index. Is animation. Again, I'm like, it's. I think it's. Set the drop down index. Where does it go? Ah, it's this guy. Well, let's just kind of do it for like the. Let's just keep with this because this. Okay. This changed the animation time. So let's just change the animation this way. Set animator. Like this, I guess. And then you need to do set animator. So what I'm gonna do is actually, since I have this function that is actually already connected to this drop down, let's find it. Animation drop down. The function name is set animation type. So I'm just gonna call it. Go away. Set animation type. So I'm just gonna call this again. Here with this number, and I hope that will work. So again, I'm just reusing my existing code. Save and play. Okay, so let's go to a shape that actually has an animation. Okay, it does work. Cool. So every time I click on space, it changes its animation type. Right? You can see this, right? So it's working. But I do have a problem here. What's the problem? There's one tiny problem. I forgot something. What did I forget? So space is working. It does change my animation type for this kind of guy. But I forgot something. What did I forget? So there's a drop down associated with this animation. It's like this guy over here. Right? You can see that, right? There's a drop down associated with this. So as I'm clicking space, the drop down doesn't change. It remains the same. So I actually need to remember to actually have this drop down change its state. Right now it's showing me animation number 2, but as I'm clicking on space, it may be moved to animation number 3 or animation number 0. So I actually need to change this drop down dynamically as I'm changing my animation state. So the good news is that's not too hard to do. So let's see, I have a drop down here, drop down. Okay, so let's just call this drop down animation type drop down. Okay, so this drop down is basically, it's like a game object of a very specific type called drop down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this button to my script so I can change it dynamically within my script. So if I go to my click manager here, and let's just first find the drop down. So the drop down that I need to change is this guy. So I need to drag this entire game object into my script. And I have a place here for it. It says none. So let's drag this animation drop down there. Okay, save. Now what I want to do is I want to just change whatever this drop down is showing me kind of dynamically as I'm clicking on the space on the keyboard. So let's find where the keyboard code is here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually add this this kind of specific line that does that here. So I'm going to do this. I think it's dot select, and I think here you need to give it the index. Again, I may be mistaken, but I think it's that easy. Let's see, what is this? Select only takes one argument. Let me see. Dot select. I think it's dot select. Oh, okay. Let me see what I did before. It's dot, oh, sorry, it's dot value. Okay, that's even easier. It's dot value, and that will be equal to this number, whatever that is. So basically, you need to assign that specific 0, 1, 2 value to this dot value, a parameter of your game object. So let's see if that works. Let's choose this again, animatable object, and I think it does work because you see it does flip. So it changes from animation 3 to animation 1 to animation 2 and all of that. So it does work. Okay. Any questions on that? Any questions? We're good? Okay. So now let's work on the part where we hide the UI. Okay, so let's do that. So let's go to Canvas. So what I need to hide the UI, first of all, like what I want to do is something like this, what I mean. So I have a button that actually hides it. Okay, so this one actually has a fancy animation and all of that. I'm just going to show you the simple version, and like if you want to know how to do the fancy animation, you can, you know, maybe I'll have time for it today. But let's just do like the hide kind of in a simple way first. Okay, so before I do that, let's just add some sort of kind of cover here, just to make it a little bit nicer and aesthetic. So I'm gonna do like add 3D object quad. Where's my quad? And let's just change the name here to be like UI background. Okay, and let's kind of just kind of put it like so it's centered. I'm not sure why is it like so far away from everything. Just put it, okay, now I can actually see it on my game screen, so that's good. So now let's just try to move it a bit here. So it's basically like, so what I want to do is I want to create like something like this kind of nice background to the UI, but I'm just going to make a simpler version. But let's just try that first. So let's move the UI background all the way there. So it's kind of small, so I actually need to increase it. That's too big. maybe 10 or 8. And this should be 8 or 12 or something. And now let's kind of just move it around so it kind of covers this area. Okay, I think this is a good start, but I think the color here is a bit kind of ugly. Let's change it to be a bit. So this is again part of your project 4. You need to kind of, you can see the buttons are kind of not really, there's no contrast here like between the color of the button and the background. So let's add a little bit of contrast. So maybe I can add this color. That's too, maybe red, no. So it's kind of black. I think black is almost okay. Let's create a new color. Just make it simpler. Yellow is bad. So let's create a new color, and let's just make it kind of grayish. So it's not too ugly. Maybe something like this. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I think this is okay. There's like an issue here with the clock, but I'm gonna fix it in a second, so don't worry. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is this UI background is not part of this canvas kind of game object, so I'm gonna drag it in just to be complete. And now I need to fix this this clock because it's a bit kind of weird. So I may have to push it forward a bit. Let's push that forward. That's the rotation. That's not the right thing to push. I think it should be this guy. That's too much forward. That's backward. Okay, now that's a bit better. Now, again, this is still not super aesthetic. You know, this is not like this, but, and this one actually has like these kind of annotations of what you should do and not do. But, you know, it's good enough for like now because we do want to do a couple more things. And also this button is kind of ugly. Where's this button over here? Here right above the clock. And this slider is also kind of ugly. So maybe I'll just delete them for now. Where is that button? This button here. That button, yeah. So it's okay. It's the mouse position indicator. Yeah. So I think okay. So it's not really a button. It just kind of shows me the position of the mouse. So let's maybe move that. Move that like down. Move it down there like he had it in the demo. Like this. Again, something like that. And this slider again is kind of ugly. What does this do? I don't remember. Let's see, it set the painting distance. So I guess we don't really need that for now. We can just delete the slider. Okay, and you can see I can really kind of condense this even more if I want to, but let's just add the button for now. So again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create this hide, unhide button. Okay. So let's right click here, click on where's UI, legacy, and button. And now we have a button. I'm going to move it over here. Again, this is still a far cry from being pretty, but I'm just going to start with this just to show you. And then here what we need to do is let's just change this name, hide, unhide. UI. Okay, and the text here should say hide. Okay, and I think this is almost good. Now this button should be connected to our script, right? So basically we need like some sort of function that actually hides the UI and all of that. So let's create a function that does that. Let's just put it here. Public void hide or unhide the UI. Okay. So this function doesn't do anything yet. I'm just gonna put like a print here, hide UI. Okay. So let me see if there's no errors here, and it compiles. Now what I need to do is I need to connect this function to to this button. So I have this button over here. The button hide and hide UI. So I have to click on plus, connect the script. So the usual, I go around painting and find this hide and hide UI. So okay, now it's connected, and let's see if it actually prints that hide. Okay, it does do that. Okay, now how do I actually hide or unhide the UI? Now there's like so what you can do, you can actually do what this kind of demo does. You can actually move the UI out of the screen, but there's like an easy way. I'm gonna show you the easy way. So you see here, there's like a checkbox here right next to Canvas, and it exists over everything in your Unity app. If I click on the checkbox, things disappear, right? So I'm just going to use this checkbox to control if I hide or unhide the UI, okay? So, so the first thing I'm thinking, like, I am going to unhide this entire canvas, but if I click on canvas, like, then I also hide this UI hide button, which is bad. That means I won't have any way to reveal it later on, right? So what I want to do is maybe I want to preserve this button, even though when I'm hiding the UI. So the way I would do it is I would create like an empty, create empty. Let's just, where's the empty here? Empty. And just cut UI option, UI, let's just call it UI and put it here. And now I'm going to drag all of the things, all of the UI elements that I want to hide into this empty. Okay. So now when I click on this button here, it doesn't hide the hide button. It just hides that specific everything that's specifically under this UI. So that will just hide that. But I'm noticing I may want to also preserve like the title and all of that. So let's just drag that out too. Where's the title? Let's drag this out here. Okay. Now to connect this, actually also I'm noticing I want the clock to be hidden as well. So let's drag the clock in under UI. And that should basically allow me to hide the clock. Okay, so now when I'm clicking this, I'm hiding everything, including the clock, and that's kind of cool. Okay, so the next step here is I need to actually connect this UI empty into the script. So let's do that. So that will be public name object UI. And what I want to do is I want to basically set this to be active or not active when I'm clicking on this button here, So let's drag. First of all, I need to save this, I think. Save. And now if I go to Click Manager, I should have a placeholder for that UI option. So let's drag the UI over there. And what I want to do now is I want to set this to be active or not active. Okay, let's do that. So it starts to remind you I already created a function for this hide button. So if I have this hide button over here, and it's using this hide, unhide the UI code. Hide, unhide. So I'm just gonna do UI set active. So this is basically how you set things to be on or off. You just have this set active option. Okay. So I forgot a couple of things, and we're gonna work on that in a second. So if I click on hide, now I have the UI hidden. Okay, but this should now show right? It should this text should change to show. It's still showing me hide, right? So it just hides but doesn't show. So I actually need to change the text here of this this button to say show. So I need to probably add like another field here that's called public text UI hide button text. Okay, and I need to actually change the text here to say hide or show for the UI. So that will be hide and hide. So that will be like hide and hide. Text equals show. Okay, and I think this should be okay. Now I have to drag that specific text element. So let's go to that text element. Where's that? This is the hide unhide UI button. So I need to drag this text hide unhide UI text. So I need to drag this specific text button into my script. And that should be here. Okay, and let's see what to do now. So it changed to show, that's good. But how do I actually show? So to show, I actually need to just do it the other way. I have to actually set this to be true, not false. Okay, so let's type that in. So first of all, I'm going to check if it's in what mode it is, and then using that, I'm going to know how to set everything up correctly. So if is equal to show, then I'm going to set it to hide. If it's equal to show, I'm going to set it to so everything will be seen. Otherwise, if this is equal to else if this is equal to hide, then I'm going to set this to show. And actually, I forgot here to set this also to hide. So I'm just having to do it the other way around. And this will be false. Okay, I think this is fine. So if it's show, then I'm changing the text to be hide, and I'm setting it to be actually seen, so I can actually do that. But if it's hide, in the hide state, I'm changing the text of the button to say show, and I'm actually hiding the UI with false here. So let's see if that works. Okay, it works. Any questions on that? Everyone is just sad and filled with despair today. Wondering why. We're almost done with the term. You don't have to be filled with despair. Okay. Now in this example here, he actually moves the entire UI kind of to the left, which is kind of cool. Now you can actually do it here. Let's see if this would work. So I can move, so see, if I move things around like this, it looks really, really bad. If I just try to move it around like this. And there's a reason for why it looks bad. So the reason is because we are now, all our UI buttons are kind of projected straight on top of the screen. So they're like kind of all the way right on top of the screen. They don't actually have a position in the world. They don't have like any 3D dimension. And the way to fix that is like you actually have to go to your canvas, this option here, and you can see you need to change the render mode. So right now it says render mode screen space overlay. You actually want to change this to world space. Now if you change this to world space, you will see everything is kind of going to be amiss. Nothing will work anymore, and you actually have to fix it and all of that. Let me show you how to kind of fix something maybe quickly. So you can actually now you can actually when you drag it, you can actually see it on world space. Let's just drag it a little bit. So you can see nothing is kind of super up to scale. I have all the UI buttons are okay, but I kind of lost my clock and all of that. So the way to do it is kind of fix it one time and have everything up to scale, and then when you're kind of doing this dragging, it will, sorry, when you're doing this dragging with your canvas, it will work. But you have to be in world space, otherwise it will not look great. But again, I don't have time to fix all of this today, but it's not, you can see that I have all the buttons here working. I just have this kind of quad and clock are not super, they're not like aligned with all those buttons. So that's something I have to kind of fix. An easy way to do that is probably just kind of move the clock a little bit so it's kind of aligned with the UI. Where's the UI? So yeah, it's kind of it's like a process, but I'm not gonna fix it today. I'm gonna put a video that explains how to do it. There's actually a lecture from the previous instructor that kind of goes over all the details. It's not a big deal, but it does take time. So I'm just gonna leave this screen space overlay for now. Any questions? Okay. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Okay, so this and this, I'm gonna. It's like already almost 5:10, so I don't have enough time to talk about these. So I'm gonna post a video that talks about that on Canvas. So unless there's any other questions, we can finish right now, and I'll be here if you have any questions. Okay. So let's stop the recording.